But we begin with something that we have not done in too long of a time, and that is how they win, how they lose. If you haven't previously heard it, this is when we go all the way back through the electoral record of one of the major candidates for president in 2020, and we try to suss out, through no bias, no political gut, just how they've won in the past and how they've lost in the past. What issues are winners for them? What issues are losers for them? When are they disciplined? When are they not disciplined? Just trying to learn the lessons of the past and see how they project into the future. We've previously done these on Kamala Harris, on Beto O'Rourke, and this week we'll be focusing on somebody that many, many, many people believe could indeed be the Democratic nominee, somebody that is the betting favorite in some markets to be the Democratic nominee. I'm talking about the senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. Primarily, we are going to spend our time on one contest, which is kind of defeating the purpose of our entire, we're going to compile things. But I think it is a very telling contest, and it's something that's worth going back. And I was surprised with some of my research and what I found during it. But we're only going to talk about one contest because Elizabeth Warren's only been in two, and they were both for the same office. Kamala Harris ran for two different offices. Beto O'Rourke ran for multiple different offices. She ran for one, won it, defended it, and now we're here. This is her third race. So let's get a little bit of background on Elizabeth Warren, 2-0, undefeated. First thing you want to know about Elizabeth Warren is that she was born in Oklahoma. And boy, howdy, we're going to talk a lot more about her being born. In terms of her allegiances, she was a laissez-faire, capitalist, free market Republican until the mid-90s. This is by her own admission. She says it was around the mid-90s. This is while she was well into academia. She had already written several books. That she kind of had a call. The call was when she realized that most people declare bankruptcy not because of overzealous spending, but rather because they over-leverage themselves for mortgages in houses in better school districts. At that point, she felt that, this is a system that is not here to reward the best of us. If a parent trying to get their kids in a better school district is something that leads to financial ruin, then it's a system that we need to, on some level, correct. It's at that point that she becomes a political appointee. This is while she is a professor at Harvard. She becomes very well cited there, by the way, as a professor, somebody that winds up becoming influential amongst academic circles. But I want to highlight this real quick because I think it has ramifications to where we are right now. She was appointed to many offices within the government, oversight offices. She's an Obama appointee after he's elected in 2008. So while we're here in this moment right now, in September 2019, looking into the 2020 race, and we start to read stories about how Elizabeth Warren has become the chosen person amongst the Democratic National Committee as opposed to Bernie Sanders, despite the fact that they share many of the same proposals, I believe this is important. It's not what you know, it's who you know, not only in politics, but in life. So the people that are making up the brain trust of the Democratic National Committee are likely people that she's a known quantity to. She's already been appointed and given positions. In a lot of ways, she's climbed the ladder. Compared to Bernie, who, by the way, is not a member of the Democratic Party, that's substantial. That means something. But let's focus on the race. The year is 2012. Scott Brown has previously been elected as a Republican to the Senate seat of Massachusetts, vacated by Ted Kennedy after his death from cancer. Elizabeth Warren runs unopposed in the Democratic primary. You would think that that would be a fairly popular race to run in, considering the fact that Republicans don't often hold Senate seats from, the playfully nicknamed People's Republic of Massachusetts. And yet there is Elizabeth Warren. She has herself a little viral moment in 2011. As she's thinking about running for Senate, this is what she says to an audience during a talking tour.
I hear all this, well, this is class warfare, this is whatever. No, there is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear, you moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for. Yep. You hired workers, the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for. You didn't have to worry that marauding bands would come and seize everything at your factory and hire someone to protect against this because of the work the rest of us did. Now look, you built a factory and it turned into something terrific or a great idea. God bless. Keep a big hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along.
I was doing the research here, and I found this. This was like the moment that she became somebody that was a little viral in the Democratic Party, put her name on the map in terms of a very watched race for Senate. But doesn't that sound familiar? That sounded a little familiar to me. It sounded a little bit like this. That happened in 2012.
If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
I mean, if it were me, I would have kept in the thing about the marauding bands. But one thing is for sure, Barry, you didn't write that. By the way, this was pointed out by a Washington Post fact-checker column at the time. Just that nobody really knew who the hell Elizabeth Warren was at the time, so it was just Obama rips off some lady. And they also didn't say it was ripped off because, whatever. Fill in the blank. I want to go ahead and gaze into my crystal ball right now. I want to look into the future. I am recording this on September 4th, 2019. But I can see the future. I've seen the future on this show many times before. And I'm just going to bring you in to what will happen if Elizabeth Warren is the nominee. In fact, I'm going to play you audio that will horrify CNN. Picture a Don Lemon just shaking, literally shaking, because he can't imagine that such a thing would happen in America. Horrifying sound for you right now. To paint the picture, supporters from Elizabeth Warren are on one side, her opponent on the other, and this is what happens. Indian war whoops, the Seminole chant in this country? Of course, the fact that the crowd in the middle of that wound up breaking into a unanimous Yankees suck chant probably tips you off to the fact that this is indeed not from the future. This is from the Elizabeth Warren race against Scott Brown. It shows exactly how long her Native American listing has been an issue, the impunity her opponents have felt in using it against her, and how ineffectively she's dealt with it in the 7 years since. I'm going to play for you a series of clips from the ads in that campaign, just to show you how much of a central issue this was in that race. Because Scott Brown initially started his campaign as a bipartisan Republican job creator. Here's a clip from his first ad.
To me, creating jobs is more important than what party you belong to. That's why one of the first votes I took as a senator was for a Democratic jobs bill.
That's the end of the ad. That's what he wants to leave you with. That's the moment he wants you to take away. You're not voting for a Republican. You're voting for me. And I'm for jobs. You want jobs, right? Remember, we're coming out of a recession. Things are still a little wonky. He wants to promise stability. That's his first ad. To show you how dramatically the tone of the issues in this race shifted, here's his second.
I'm Scott Brown, and I approve this message.
Elizabeth Warren is trying to put questions about her heritage behind her.
Warren admitted to identifying herself as Native American to employers.
Something now genealogists have said they have zero evidence of.
She's facing tough questions about whether she claimed to be a minority for professional gain.
Warren did give an answer. The problem is it keeps changing.
Is there anything else that's going to come out about you that we don't already know?
I don't think so, but who knows?
Now this, right here, is a pivotal moment. Not only for Elizabeth Warren in this race, but Elizabeth Warren as a candidate, Elizabeth Warren as a politician, Elizabeth Warren as a prospective president. This is her response.
As a kid, I never asked my mom for documentation when she talked about our Native American heritage. What kid would? But I knew my father's family didn't like that she was part Cherokee and part Delaware, so my parents had to elope. Let me be clear. I never asked for or never got any benefit because of my heritage. The people who hired me have all said they didn't even know about it. I'm Elizabeth Warren. I approve this message. Scott Brown can continue attacking my family, but I'm going to keep fighting for yours.
So a few things to notice here. She doesn't call Scott Brown a racist. This is a smear on her family, an unfair one, but not a racist one explicitly. That's going to be very different than how she handles it with Trump in our modern era. I was kind of struck by listening to this in her own words at that time, because right up until a very important part, it was what I thought she should have been saying publicly now for a little bit. It's right up until the moment she says that she never asked for or received, and received is our key word here, any benefit from her employers. In my opinion, she'd be dealing with a lot less crap at this exact junction if she had said, family is complicated. How could anyone know anything? Everything I said, I believed is true because I believe my family, period. You can't claim that you never received a benefit. Because right now, there is a core contradiction in the story of Elizabeth Warren. If the factory owner in that clip that made her go viral owes a portion of his success to the country for roads and rule of law, how is Warren so positive that she never received a benefit for her heritage? Both should be passive recognitions that the world is more complicated than our understanding of it are. We should be recognizing that there are passive things that put the wind to our sails. We should be appreciative of them. We should honor them. We should refill those coffers. But that's some more philosophical stuff. In terms of the X's and O's, this leaves Elizabeth Warren with a little bit of a soft underbelly. She left something open, and it is exploited. Old clippings of Harvard touting her as a Native American professor have surfaced. A quote from the Harvard Crimson followed, as did a 1984 book called Pow Wow Chow, where Warren contributed a few recipes. Brown continued to pelt her.
Professor Warren got caught in a lie.
Harvard thought that Elizabeth Warren was a minority because she said so.
Harvard touted her as a minority.
Initially, she said she didn't know anything about it.
She kept on covering up and going deeper and deeper into the hole.
Elizabeth Warren got caught.
You know, you need to come clean when you're caught.
It seems like this is a pattern for her.
I think it should affect a lot of voters and how they feel about Elizabeth Warren.
We already have enough people in Washington that will say anything. Don't need one more.
And yet, Scott Brown was elected to Ted Kennedy's seat after all, and Massachusetts is as blue as it gets. Where else does a Republican get in trouble in an attack ad for supporting a conservative Supreme Court justice? This is a real radio ad.
In the Senate debate, Scott Brown was asked,
"Who's your model Supreme Court justice?"
Here's Scott Brown.
Let me see here. That's a great question. I think Justice Scalia is a very good judge.
Justice Scalia is adamantly opposed to Roe v. Wade. He said it was, quote, utterly idiotic. And Scalia ruled against equal pay for women and said the Constitution doesn't protect women from discrimination.
Elizabeth Warren had him dead to rights. She stuck to class warfare. She survived, however rickety the attacks on her Native American listing. And she wins 53% to 46%. She is elected to her first public office at the age of 63. So let's take a look. How does Elizabeth Warren win elections? Economic warfare is being waged, and she's ahead of the curve. With the progressive wing of the party energized, she doesn't need to modify her Massachusetts message much. She's an economics professor who knows that capitalism is out of control and needs to be institutionalized for its own good. So let's take a look at how she loses. And I'm doing some guessing here because she is 2-0. She's undefeated. She loses because she's sloppy on her personal story. And it comes off as somebody with something to hide. Going away from the Pocahontas stuff for a minute, this kind of weakness can manifest itself in many ways. Her past as a Republican, how much of a true rebel firebrand she is when she came straight out of Harvard without a primary challenger in the 2012 election against Brown. That has to indicate some kind of institutional support. Both of these could be brought up in the primary in the next few months. On the issues, she's a machine, all right? About herself and her motives, she wobbles and makes very lasting mistakes that she has a hard time getting over. Now, note that I did not talk very much about the 2018 race because it was a laugher. She won 60 to 36, and really the most telling moment of that campaign wasn't even about that race.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Warren. Is Dr. Bustamante in, please?
In the senator's genome, we did find 5 segments of Native American ancestry with very high confidence, where we believe the error rate is less than 1 in 1,000.
She had 6 years to come up with that. 6 years. And if you don't live in Massachusetts or followed that race, you now know exactly how much she knew that she did need to get ahead of it. And that's what we got. A bad stunt meant to wash away a sin from 6 years ago for a race 2 years from the moment she published it. It did nothing of the sort. She was excoriated by the left for claiming tribal heritage when she shouldn't have. She was humiliated on the right because she had such trace elements of Native American blood in this DNA test. This was an absolute disaster, one she had to apologize for and is now, by the way, deleted from any official presence that she has on the internet. 6 years. Which brings us to right now. She's done great since then. Really, really good. Largely because she's been able to run a race free of such accusations. But things are about to get a lot tighter in the primary. And if she wins the nomination, it will get even tighter in the general. She is fast running out of days when she's not going to be forced to talk about things that have always been a weakness and she has shown little sign of being able to get over. 6 years, she couldn't do it. But if you're an Elizabeth Warren supporter, here's to lucky number 7.
Politics